Hi, my name's Zephyr Wildman. Welcome. In this practice, I'd like us to turn our attention to the obstacles that we're going to face in practice and in life. This comes from the Yoga Sutras 1.30. In that way, it lists 9 obstacles that we're going to continually work with through our experience. Now, this is really about looking at the stages of yoga where we work with self-awareness, self-understanding, self-acceptance to self-discipline, which is that focused, diligent practice of abhyasa, of using anything that comes into our path as an opportunity to practice, and it becomes the teacher. So switching this narrative when an obstacle comes your way, of instead of saying life is happening to me, we start to realize that life is happening for us, in that the obstacle becomes the teacher. So it is a really good practice to become aware of your obstacle and spend some time actually researching how it manifests, how you react to it. You dig deep into that self-inquiry, that self-understanding of maybe what feelings are being provoked, what thoughts are being reinforced, where in your body you're feeling it. Is it very rajasic? Is it tamasic? This sense of opening up this curiosity in practice, this svadhyaya of self-study and self-understanding of how you react to an obstacle. And the process of practicing tapas, this kind of focused, diligent practice that creates heat, not just physical heat, but energetic heat, mental heat, to create positive change in your life. And then there's a point in our practice where we become so saturated with our attention at the obstacle that we breathe in some breathing room, we breathe in that presence or the light of awareness, that there's a turning point in which we finally surrender and let go of maybe what is arising, and that process of Ishvara Pranadhana, letting go to the Godhead of your understanding. So this is the whole aspect of Kriya Yoga. So to go through the 9 obstacles that we're going to face. The first one is disease or dis-ease, that experience of illness, but also that uneasiness, like you want to jump out of your skin and run away. This is going to manifest at different times of our lives in different situations, that actually is going to be an obstacle that will create a certain amount of suffering in our path. The next one is discontentment, the sense that this isn't right, this isn't as it should be, or if I had this, then it would be okay. So there's this underlining sense of discontentment that it becomes an obstacle towards that experience of the state of yoga. The next one is self-doubt. And self-doubt is that real harsh criticism and self-judgment, that reinforcement of guilt, shame, and fear about ourselves, and that narrative, the negative narrative that we reinforce, that creates the smallness and separateness. The next one is carelessness. And this is carelessness of our energy, our time, kind of just depleting ourselves and thinning ourselves out so much, where we dwindle our resources to be powerful or effective in our life. So there's this sense of just, giving it away and having nothing for yourself. So giving from an empty cup, as they say. There is the next one, the 5th, is dullness, or this sense of apathy. This is pointing towards that depression or that experience of hopelessness, that inertia where you just feel like you're getting stuck, and or you're eddying out in the river of life and there's just no momentum or movement. The next obstacle is procrastination. And this is just kind of avoiding the responsibilities, because sometimes what we need to do isn't very fun and it's quite boring, and or we are projecting that it will be painful, so we're avoiding it. So this idea of procrastinating the inevitable creates an obstacle in which prevents us from experiencing that state that we desire. The next one is led and controlled by our senses. And this is a very common modern day issue. You know, our social media, our phones, our smartphones keep pulling our attention out of being here now. How we read, how we get our information, whether it's through sound bites on the radio, the TV, or our phone, we can only do like 160 characters, or else we lose our attention. We're constantly trying to find better sounds, better tasting foods, brighter, colorful images, and our senses imprison us because we're just all about trying to satisfy our senses. So that idea of feeling imprisoned by our senses, led and controlled by our senses, rather than using our senses to actually nurture us and direct us towards our ultimate goal or experience of the state of yoga. The next one is lack of concentration, and this kind of looks towards the previous one, but the lack of concentration, we find it so difficult to concentrate. As you're listening to this, you've probably had about 40 different thoughts and your mind's gone off on little tangents and you had to bring it back to watching this video. It's kind of an epidemic since smartphones have been around, even more so. Our attention span is it was statistically gathered that it's shorter than a goldfish now, because our lifestyles are dictated by this kind of instant gratification. So that idea that we find it really hard to concentrate and we become these kind of leaky vessels. When we receive information, we know it's good, we just don't have the capacity to hold it. The last one is instability. And instability becomes an obstacle because, you know, it is really hard to feel safe, belonging, and trusting when you have an unstable home, or a relationship, or a community, or politics, or a culture. Instability in your body, instability in your emotions, instability in your thoughts. So there is this sense that when instability is present, it becomes an obstacle because we don't feel safe. We don't feel like we belong. There's a sense of separateness, and there's a lack of trust, and a belief that you're going to be okay. So the idea of these 9 obstacles is one in which we get to practice regularly. We turn our attention to what is between us and feeling free, what is between us and feeling at peace, what is between us and feeling whole, what is between us and being in love, what is between us and awakening. So there's this sense is whatever is between you and, you know, that experience of freedom, this becomes your teacher, you know, and that inner guru, that ability to perceive, Viveka Shakti, which is that sense of wise discernment, that wise judgment, that ability to witness without judgment, criticism, and that curiosity as you open your eyes to what is your obstacle, and how quick can you turn your attention towards understanding how you are manifesting your reaction to the obstacle. So this is pointing towards the symptoms of suffering, and it's from Sutra 131. The 4 symptoms of suffering is 1, you get negative thinking, and you ruminate around the negative thing, like, I don't want this obstacle, I don't want this to be here, why should this be here, or why am I always here, or I should be better at this. And the shoulds and the I don't want, and this kind of resistance language, and or blaming and pointing the finger just creates more suffering. So that idea of look at the negative thinking. The next symptom of suffering is emotional distress. So the mind and emotions mirror each other. So whatever you're thinking, all of a sudden you start to see the emotions that are mirroring that, or the emotions that are mirroring the thinking. So you can see how they interrelate. And in yoga, they call it the heart mind. There's no differentiation, but we can actually pull them apart and start to hear the mental words and narratives, storytelling, and then starting to experience the distress of the emotions, of the undesirable or unpleasant sensations and emotions that might be arising, and name them. And then we start to look at the instability of the body. So this is the third symptom of suffering, is the instability in yourself. So the shaky arms, the fidgeting, the kind of wandering of the eyes, and all of a sudden you start to see that there's a huge part of suffering that is being physically expressed. The last symptom of suffering is that there's disturbances in the breath that mirror the disturbances in the mind. So we have a tendency to hold the inhale pattern in a frightful state. I don't want this obstacle. Or we exhale and we don't breathe in and going, I don't care. So notice when an obstacle, watch your breath. You might have certain speed bumps, maybe midway. Maybe every time you're about to finish your exhale, you run away because you just don't want to let go. So watching how the breath and the mind swim in tandem. And when there's speed bumps in the breath, there's a little speed bump in the mind called a vritti, these roaming tendencies of the mind or little disturbances in the mind. So as we start to look at these symptoms, we can start to turn our attention towards our practice that creates heat for positive change. And is remembering is the physical heat, is the energetic heat, is the heat from the alchemy of the inhale and exhale that burns brighter. And it's that mental heat of concentration, of really embracing whatever obstacle is present, offering it to the fire of the practice to burn away what impedes you from actually seeking your goal or the result, the experience of serenity, peace, tranquility, enduring calmness, connection, faith, trust, whatever your heart longs for, why you're practicing. So that idea of svadhyaya is really starting to take responsibility and accountability of how you're reacting to the obstacle, and inquire so much deeper and trying different tools from practice to actually learn how to directly penetrate rather than trying to go under it, over it, around it, avoid it, really embrace it. And then that sense of Ishvara Pranadhana, surrendering finally, going, I can't do this, I need some help. I am open, I am willing, please guide me. And in that way, it becomes a devotional practice. So just a little tiny bit of philosophy on the archetype of Ganesh. Ganesh is symbolically the god who removes all obstacles. So people pray to Ganesh to remove obstacles, but he's a cheeky little bugger. And actually, he's the one who puts the obstacles in your path. And in that way, he employs his consorts, Saraswati and Lakshmi, in that way in which you start to look at your mind and what you are experiencing in that experience of the obstacles. So Saraswati is that one that actually incorporates that kind of attention towards your mind and actually gaining more self knowledge and that skill in practice. Whereas Lakshmi is like, what do you desire? Really, ultimately, your end goal of your desires to fulfill your purpose in this life, the tools to meet your purpose, that sense of that creative force within you and that desire for freedom, for liberation. So in a way where these images of these deities, as we hand our will and life over to them, we embody them to give us the strength to be able to face the obstacle, to fuel us to be able to learn how to cultivate awareness, self-understanding, self-acceptance, and that self-discipline in remembering Shmurti, that which is remembered, of these techniques and tools to work with every day. It's kind of like cleaning the kitchen. Clean the kitchen once, but you realize you have to clean it every day. So just like our practice, we have to get on our practice every day. That focused, diligent practice, abhyasa. Vairagya is letting go of sensory observations. As we practice with Viveka Shakti, the keen discernment of witnessing, we practice ultimately to embrace what is between us and feeling free, what is between us and being in love, what is between us and knowing the truth, what is between us and finding liberation. And whatever is between you and that becomes your teacher. So rewriting the story, again, the obstacles we face are disease or dis-ease, discontentment, self-doubt, carelessness, dullness or apathy, procrastination, led and controlled by your senses, lack of concentration, and instability. So acknowledge, be honest with yourself. What is present today? And work with that. So in practice, we will work with embracing whatever obstacle is with us, and we're going to work with this tantric way of really helping create this heat and cathartically work in removing the obstacle. So I hope to see you in practice.